what should we make of those allegations of Russian hacking? Our political analyst is Professor Michael Genovese from Loyola Marymount University. Welcome, Professor. Thank you so much for being here again. So let's first start with those allegations that Russia had some involvement in our election. The president just ordered a full review of this yesterday. What do you make of this?
Well, this is the most definitive and authoritative response of the federal government to this question of alleged involvement. Seems like there was involvement, number one, and number two, it was intended to aid Donald Trump's victory. And the Trump response was priceless. It was typical Trump. You attack the source, and then you distract by some great falsehood. We had the greatest electoral college victory in history. Well, if you look at the last 10 elections, his rank's number 7. So near the bottom, not the top. But it works because it distracts you from what really is the big story, that our adversary, to some our enemy, intended to impact the election and may have in favor of a candidate. If you look at the last couple of weeks of the election, WikiLeaks, the email, FBI twice, it may have had an impact. We don't know. It's hard to tell.
But is there any proof that this could have happened?
Well, that's what they're establishing now. The CIA says there is ample evidence to say that there is. It's a question of, filling in the couple of blank spaces and getting some of the details more precise.
That'll be interesting to watch, that's for sure. Now, what can we make of who Trump has picked so far for his cabinet? He's made some pretty bold moves so far. What does this say about what his presidency will be like?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, we've seen the rise of Vice President Pence in influence. He's the insider. He knows the players. Donald Trump is the outsider. He doesn't know players. So Pence's his power is going to rise and his influence will continue to rise. The other is Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, very close to Donald Trump. Trump trusts him and likes him. He has no experience in government. The cabinet so far appears to be one of two things. It's either a hard right, very, very conservative nominee, or one of the billionaire boys club, which is the surprise because all these Goldman Sachs people he would attack, and now he's bringing them in. So instead of draining the swamp, he may be filling it with alligators.
He accused Clinton and Cruz of having too tight of a relationship with these types.
That's right. And so what we're seeing is him backing away from a lot of his campaign pledges. But in terms of the personnel, Pence, Jared Kushner, the question is who's going to become Donald Trump's Dick Cheney? Who's going to guide him through the presidency? And right now it looks like Mike Pence is that person.
Well, you did touch on Kushner, who of course is his son-in-law, married to his daughter Ivanka. He was recently on the cover of Forbes magazine, I saw, as the man who elected Trump. Do you think that's a bold statement?
It's hyperbole, but it's also something that the Trump team is trying to push because he's going to be at the right hand of Donald Trump from day one. They're moving to Washington, D.C., he and his wife Ivanka, and he may not get a paid position, but he will certainly be a man of great influence. And Donald Trump likes him and trusts him.
Now, we've heard some issues that there might be some conflicts of interest. What can you tell us about that, Professor?
Most presidents will either divest, which would be difficult for Trump to do because he has such vast holdings, or they put their holdings in a blind trust, which Donald Trump said he's not going to do. But December 15th, he's going to make a definitive statement, according to Trump, hopefully to clear this up. He has to do something drastic because if he doesn't, from day one, from the day he takes the oath of office, he will be in violation of Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, the Emolument Act, which says that no one in government can take gain or profit from a foreign entity. Well, the Bank of China is on the 4th floor of Trump Tower, so he's going to get money from them. And so what Donald Trump needs to do is he needs to pull himself away from that because what's today improper, in a few weeks is going to be illegal.
Well, because he is still staying on as executive producer of The Celebrity Apprentice.
And you wonder why. But that's part of what we're seeing in the transition. He's having a hard time converting from candidate Trump to President Trump. And what would seem to be a bit unseemly, why does he need to be part of The Apprentice? He just can't seem to pull himself away. He has not yet found his presidential mojo. He's acting in a way that is undisciplined and unfocused, and he has to bring it together to truly become president.
All right, Professor Michael Genovese, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll have a lot to watch over the next 40 days or so, and thereafter as well.